All right, so we just finished with part five. Uh, we have, the number of classes and the width of each class for histogram one, and we've got the number of classes and the width of each class for histogram two. Now we need to construct the frequency distribution table. Okay, but the way that this MyOpenMath question is going to require you to put in the values for the table is going to be as a list. Okay. Um, you know, if you were doing it by hand, yeah, it would be kind of a laborious problem. But I'm going to show you how you can use a spreadsheet and some spreadsheet functions to do it pretty effortlessly. And I think you'll be impressed. So let's first look at, again, kind of where we're going. So let's look at the steps here. So, we came down here, calculated the width for both histograms, and completed this part. Now we're moving on to step four of the histogram design, where we have to create this table. So this table has columns of class, lower bound, upper bound, midpoint, and frequency. And, um, the first class lower bound starts with our starting point. And then from our starting point, we just add the width to get our upper bound. And then to get the lower bound for the second class, we just pretty much take this value, this upper bound value, and copy it down here, which is the same as taking our starting point and adding the width. And then we just continue to fill this out. The midpoint is just the average between these two. And the frequency we get just by counting the values, okay, within the range. So let's go about working on that. Now that's what I've done here is kind of provided that for you as a worksheet. And so this is the frequency distribution table for histogram one. And here's the frequency distribution table for histogram two. So you notice that this one says, K high and W high. And this one says K low and W low. So if you want to do this by hand, you can do this by hand, which is how I taught it in the lecture notes. But the way that I'm going to go about kind of recreating this is going to be using the spreadsheet software itself. So let's take a look at that. All right, so we're going to put that frequency distribution table right here down below for histogram one. So we have to create the column headings. So first, let's call this, let's just put in here, frequency distribution table. And then here's going to be a column heading. So we'll call this class number. This one, we'll call this one the lower bound. And let's see, because we're using Google Sheets, oops. Let me show you a little trick. If you hit enter, right, it goes to the next cell. But what if I wanted to add a second line inside this cell? At least on the PC, I think if I hold down the alternate key and then hit enter, it'll allow me to go down to a second line within the cell. And so because we're using Google Sheets, this is going to be a parentheses here. And the upper bound, alternate key, and enter. And I can put a bracket. This is going to be the midpoint. Hold down the alternate key, hit enter. And the formula I'm going to use is going to be the lower bound plus the upper bound divided by 2. Now remember, the spreadsheet's not going to do any calculations with this because I didn't start it with an equal sign. So it's just going to treat this as text, not as anything really to calculate. And then here we've got the frequency, which we can use like a lowercase f for that. Okay, so what we need to do is start to fill in these columns. So we need to fill this column with the numbers 1 through 8. Now I could just sit here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that was pretty fast. Okay, but let me use this as an opportunity to kind of show you a cool trick. So let's say if you put in the first 3 numbers, okay, this first 3 numbers is enough to show the spreadsheet software that there's a pattern. And you'll notice that if I select these 3 cells, if I select this pattern, there's this solid blue dot here in the lower right-hand corner. And when I put the cursor over that dot, the cursor changes from an arrow to a cross. And if I hold down the mouse button, the left mouse button, if I hold it down and drag it, then it senses that pattern and it repeats it. And I kind of overdid it a little bit. But that's how you can kind of copy a pattern as many times as you need. You know, if I needed this to go down further, then I could have just done that to get the same result. Okay. And I'm going to kind of use that same trick to fill out these columns as well really easily. So remember that the lower bound for the first class is our starting point. And so our starting point, at least for me, was 0. So I'm going to put that there. Now, the upper bound is the starting point plus the width. Now, I could, I could do something like this, like 0 plus 19. Of course, that's going to give me 19. But instead of 0, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an equation. I'm going to say equals this cell plus 19. Now, it's going to give me the same result, but I have a reason for doing this, and I'll show this here in a minute. Now, let's do the same thing down here. So down here, the lower bound of the second class is going to be the starting point plus the width. So I'm going to say equals the starting point plus the width, 19. Again, I could have just typed that in, but look at what I can do. If I want to take this formula, and this formula takes the value above it and adds 19 to it, and I want to copy that formula all the way down, guess what? I can just grab this corner control, drag it down, and let go. And it uses that same formula all the way down. So notice here, if we click in the formula bar, it's using the previous value and it's adding 19 to it. And I can do the same thing over here. You see, that only works because I programmed that cell. And this is what I'm trying to teach you. This is how a spreadsheet works and how it can make your life a lot easier. And by that same token, we can do the same thing with midpoint. Well, what's the midpoint? It's this value plus this value divided by 2. So let's put equals. Now we do have to use parentheses. And so it's going to be the lower bound plus the upper bound, close parentheses, divided by 2. And we can see that, 9.5 is the midpoint between 0 and 19. And if I want to take that formula and copy it all the way down, I can just do that. And there's all my midpoints. Okay, so I'm going to show you a cool function that's built in. Now, we want to count the frequency for each class. And so one of the things you could do is if you've got a sorted data set like this, we could count how many values are between 0, not including 0, and up to 19 and including 19. And so you can see for me, between 0 and 19, I've got these three. So the frequency in the first class would be 3. All right. But now to go from 19 to 38, okay, I could count manually if I want to, but I don't want to. All right. I want to use the power of spreadsheet software to do that count for me. So what's nice is that there's a function, and I'm going to type this in next to it here because I didn't start this with an equal sign, right? It's called frequency. And in between the parentheses, it asks for two inputs. It wants the range of data or the range of datums. And let me put the data set. Let me put the data set here. And then it wants the upper bounds, the upper bounds of your classes. All right. So let's use this as our model. All right. So I'm going to click here in this first cell for the first class. I'm going to put equals and start typing the word frequency. So FR, okay, I just put FR and it already is showing frequency. So I'm going to click that. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so our data set. Well, I know mine goes from A2 to A242. So I'm going to put A2 colon A242. Now, to put in this next argument for this function, or this next input that this function needs, I need to separate it with a comma. So I'm going to put comma, and now I need to select the range of the upper bounds for my classes. So now instead of type it in, I'm just going to use the mouse. So I'm going to click and drag here at the upper bound for class 1, click and hold, and drag down to the last upper bound of my last class, like that. And you can see it put that in that range. So for me, that was H7 to H14. Yours might be different. And then I'm going to put right parentheses. So the right parentheses, is saying, okay, all of my inputs for this frequency function are complete. They're all inside. And now as soon as I hit enter, look at that. It calculated the frequency for each interval. I'm sorry, for each class for me. And down here, this is the number of datums that were higher than your upper bound, and it's 0. So I think I can just delete. Can I not delete that? I don't know why. Looks like I can't delete it. Let me try. I don't want to delete row. Certainly don't want to do that. Yeah, I don't want to delete it that way either. So this 0 must be kind of linked to this frequency function, and so it's not letting me delete it. That's fine. We don't need it. Okay. So we just really quickly use the power of the spreadsheet software to generate all these numbers for us. So what we need to do now so that you can get a grade for your work is in the MyOpenMath problem, question 9 and question 10 are asking for a list of the lower class boundaries and the list of the upper class boundaries. So what is this list of numbers and what is that list of numbers? Now, again, we can't just copy and paste because this program that I made wants it in a certain format. Or you could just write them down and copy them in. But again, let me show you a really cool function. So the function we're going to use, we are going to use the join function. Okay, and I'm just typing that in just so that you can see what I'm saying. And so this is going to be our, let's see, this will be our list of lower bounds. Next, I'll have the list of upper bounds. And to drop the suspense, we're going to have a list of our frequencies. Okay. Let's see here. Let me just center justify that. Okay. So how do we do it? So what we do, let me kind of collect my thoughts for a minute. Oh yeah. Okay. So we're going to use a function. So here we need to put equals. And the function we want to use is called join. So what join does is it concatenates elements of arrays with a delimiter. So concatenate means it puts together, and a delimiter is when it puts these separate numbers together, what do you want to put between them to keep them separate? That's a delimiter. So we're going to use this function. And the first thing it wants is the delimiter. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put a quote, comma, quote. So what this is telling the join function is we're going to use comma as a delimiter. And then the second argument, I have to put a comma in order to put in the second argument. The second argument is the list of values that we want to concatenate or we want to join. And I want to select this list of lower bounds. And now I can hit the right parentheses. And there it is. There's all of these numbers pre-formatted with commas in between each value. And I can take this, copy, go to the My Open Math problem, and just paste it right in. Let's come back to the spreadsheet. Once again, equals, join. The delimiter is going to be a comma, but we have to put the comma inside parentheses. Otherwise, it might mistake that comma as being a comma that separates arguments in the function. And then we put a comma, and now we want the list of upper bounds, which are going to be all of these. Right parentheses, enter. And then I can just take this, copy, go over here, paste. I am going to kind of work ahead just because I'm on a roll. So we're going to do the same thing with the list of frequencies. Okay. So it's going to be equal, join. Our delimiter is a comma, so we need to put that in quotes, comma, list of frequencies, just like that. Right parentheses. And we don't have anything to paste that into yet. Okay, but I'm just going to leave that the way it is. All right. And now we just need to go through and do the same thing again with the second histogram. So now that you've got these done, you kind of have an idea of how you can space things out. So here we're going to do histogram 2. This is going to be K high, W high, starting point. And so K high was 16. W high was rounding up to 10. And again, you can look at your worksheet for that. And 0 for the starting point. And what I can do to save myself a little bit of time is since I've already typed this stuff in, I can just select these 2 rows and these 5 columns and kind of do a copy. So to bring that up, I right-clicked and then left-click on copy. And I want to put that down below, right about here. So I'll right-click and choose paste. All right, so that way I don't have to retype everything. And so now instead of having 8 classes, now I've got 16. So I just have to start by putting in a pattern. And then I can select these, grab this control handle in the lower right-hand corner, left click and hold the left mouse button and drag down. And I only want 16, so I'll just delete those 2. Okay. The lower bound of the first class starts with our starting point, which is 0. And then we want to program the upper bound to be equal to the starting point plus our width, which is 10. Hit enter. This one is going to be equal to the starting point plus our width. Enter. And now we can just copy this formula all the way down. Can take this formula, copy it all the way down. And then to calculate the midpoint, we have to put the numerator in parentheses because of order of operations. Lower bound plus upper bound, right parentheses, divided by 2. Enter. And 5 is the midpoint between 0 and 10, so that looks right. So I will click this cell, drag the control point all the way down, and let go. There's all my midpoints. Okay. Next, I'm going to calculate the frequency. So I'm going to use this frequency function. Remember, it wants the data set and it wants the range of upper bound classes. So let's go here. Equals, start typing the word frequency in. This is what I want. Okay, it wants the range of my data. So for me, that was from A2 to A242. That's the first input for this function. I'll put a comma. That'll allow me now to put in the second input for this function, which is the list of upper bounds, like that. Then I'll hit right parentheses and enter. And there's all my frequencies. So let me see, 42. Yep, that looks right. Okay. Yep, that looks right. All right, so now we've got this list of frequencies. Oh yeah, let me go ahead and let me copy these 3 cells. So I can paste it down here. And then I'll use that join function. So equals join. I need to put in the delimiter, which is parentheses, comma, parentheses. That's the first input. The second input is the list I want to concatenate, or the list that I want to join, which is this list of cells. Right parentheses, enter. Now I can take this, copy, go to the My Open Math problem, paste. Go back to the spreadsheet. Now I'll do the list of upper bounds. So equals, join, put in the delimiter, parentheses, comma, parentheses. That's the first input. Now we need to put it in a comma to now tell it we're going to put in a second input. And that's going to be here. Right parentheses. Take this list, copy, go back to My Open Math, paste it here. And before I hit submit, just want to finish up and do the same thing with the list of frequencies here. So equals, join, and then the delimiter, parentheses, comma, parentheses, then a comma again. Put this list of frequencies here, right parentheses, enter. There it is. And we'll need that for the next part. So let's go back to the MyOpenMath problem. Click submit, and if everything's done correctly, it should tell us and let us on to the next part. There we go. Those are all correct. And now it's led us to the last part, which I think we can go ahead and put in. Let's go ahead and join these two parts. So now we're going to put in the list of frequencies. So go back to the spreadsheet. We want the list of frequencies for the first histogram. So I'll copy that. Come back to the MyOpenMath. Paste it there. Then we need the list of frequencies for the second histogram that has 16 classes in it. Go back. Take this list, copy, and paste. Now we hit submit. Should tell us if it's right or not. Here we are. So part 7, the frequency list that I put in, they're both correct. And so what part 8 does is it now shows you the results of everything that you just did. So here is histogram 1 with the frequency table. It says that you did this with Google Sheets with a starting point at 0, 8 classes, where each class is 19 wide. So, here is the lower bounds. Here's the upper bound for each class. And then here was the frequency for each class. Down below is what your histogram should look like when you make the histogram for yourself in Google Sheets. It should have this exact same pattern. So you can see that it has a starting point of 0, has a width of 19. Let's see here. Starting point of 0, width of 19. Each of them has an equal width of 19. The horizontal axis is labeled with the label of our random variable. So for me, that was speed. And the vertical axis is frequency, right? So the first class had a frequency of 3. So we'd expect that to be down here. The second class had a frequency of 39. So the second class had a frequency of 39, almost 40. That's why it terminates there. 93 for the third class, 82 for the fourth class. So 82 is just above 80 here. And then 20 exactly for the fifth class. The sixth was 2, and the seventh and eighth were both 1. So this is what your histogram should look like. Now, you cannot use these in your project. You need to make these yourself. But I wanted to show you, what you can expect. This is what yours should look like, something like this. And then here is histogram 2. Again, this one, mine had 16 classes. And this is what the histogram should look like with 16 classes. So you can see with 16 classes, this histogram looks different than this one. But they're based off of the same data, the speed random variable. So it tells you, congratulations, you've completed your histogram visualization of your data. You want to use this problem to compare with your results with your calculator, Google Sheets, or Microsoft Excel. Your report should include the formulas, calculations, and step-by-step procedures you created to create this online problem, you must also create your own graphs. You cannot copy the graphs in this online problem. The graphs are provided so that you can use them as a guide. All right. So that concludes this tutorial for using the spreadsheet software. So here we've kind of gone through together and used the spreadsheet for one random variable. You're now going to do the same thing with a second random variable in your data set and do the second MyOpenMath problem. So we flip over here. And here we are in, oh, whoa, whoa, it's kind of jumping around. Okay, step 7. So I clicked on this link and I did 2 histograms with the speed random variable. Now I'll click on this one. I'll do 2 more histograms, but with a different random variable like height or duration or length, anything but speed. Okay. So that's why I've provided 2 of these, one for each random variable that you're including in your report. Okay. I think that concludes this tutorial. Let me know if you have any questions.